Hello, my name is John Cleveland with Clean Oil USA, and what I'm going to be demonstrating for you today is a product called BioMatrix, what we consider one of the most powerful absorbents on the planet. We're going to be demonstrating against a product called clay or kitty litter. Most of you household people know what kitty litter looks like. In the industrial commercial world, know what the oil dry, floor dry, your clay product, which is pretty much made up of granules that we consider an adsorbent. And I'll explain the difference between the two later. We're going to use some basic diesel used motor oil, which is typically something that would get spilt on a shop floor. And we're going to cover one of them with your clay-based product. And we're going to cover the other one with BioMatrix. I'm going to try to use 2 equal amounts. The kitty litter product generally will not be put down and picked up right away. Normally you will sit overnight, come back the next day, and they will scoop this up. In some places I've seen piles of cat litter pile up for 4 or 5 days. The bottom line is the cat litter doesn't have very good wicking properties. As you can see, the oil is still leaving a lot of residue, and it's still underneath here. If I take the kitty litter and pick it up, you can see that the oil is conglomerated around the clay granules, and it's leaching and leaving a lot of residue on my fingers here. Where on the BioMatrix, I can move the product aside just the way I did here. This is all that was sitting on top, but the BioMatrix is a very good wicking agent where I just push it back and forth and my surface is completely dry, and I can even clean off my fingers here with all the residue that was on the kitty litter. And so you get no leaching, you get no oil residue when you use the BioMatrix. Now I'm going to pile this back up again, and we're going to push this to the side, and we'll pick up the residue here that the clay product left behind, and we're going to pile this thing up for another round. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little hole here, and we're going to go with some transmission fluid. And I'm going to fill this completely up with red transmission fluid. Typical ATF transmission fluid. It has a little bit lighter viscosity than your 40 weight motor oil. While I'm doing that, I'm still let this the kitty litter sit over here on the side. We're going to also show paint. And what I like to do is take an oil-based paint, apply it to the pan, and then we're going to cover that with kitty litter. Let's let that sit for a little while. And generally, again, as I move the clay across the pan, you can see that the paint is leaving a trail behind, and the kitty litter is yellow on the outside, but the surface tension is not really holding on to much of the paint, and you've got a lot of residue on the bottom. Again, demonstrating that it's not a very good wicking agent. Most of the clay granules with the oil and the paint are conglomerating to the outside. In other words, that's how we come up with the word adsorbent versus absorbent, where when I put the BioMatrix down, you'll see all this yellow paint here as I move it about the pan will be quickly absorbed into the peat moss, and you have no yellow residue whatsoever, and it's completely encapsulated into our product. Now the difference between the absorbent, the Biomatrix, which is made from 100% organic sphagnum peat moss that has been heat activated and dried down to a moisture content of 10%. Once it reaches that level, a lot of these cells that we've referred to as barrel cells, peat moss, much like a sponge, these cells become empty with water in its hydrophilic state, and when we dry it, those cells all of a sudden be vacated, and now they're ready to absorb oil. And once it absorbs the oil, it encapsulates it, and it'll hold that oil in to 50 pounds of pressure per square inch. So it's safe for landfill. It will not leach out into other trash, and it can even be land farmed, and successfully oil spills can be cleaned up without any leaching at all. And again, we just picked up that paint. I can even put down some more paint. And I'll use this same product, and we'll move it back across the peat moss, and just almost magically the paint disappears and the peat moss stays brown in color. Now also, I'll tilt this pan up a little bit. You can see that all of the transmission fluid has also been absorbed in this little demonstration I've got over here. Now we've already used this pile to pick up a big oil slick, and now I'll fill the middle with the red transmission fluid, and it absorbs it without even agitation. So when I say it's the most powerful absorbent, it's also the most powerful wicking agent, which gives it a wicking power without moving it around. So you can literally surround a spill and create a berm and prevent that oil from escaping. Now, the next thing I'm going to show is a fuel spill. And on a fuel spill, most of your adsorbents or your granule-based products are useless because a lot of the viscosity, the less they work. We saw it, the oil conglomerate pretty good to the clay granules, but the oil's all on the outside. We saw it pick up less of the paint because it was a lot of viscosity, and it left a lot of the paint behind. Even more so, once we get to a fuel, the clay is completely ineffective because of the surface tension. So we get to a real light solvent here, emulating a gasoline or a diesel fuel. You can see that the solvent is disappearing almost instantly into the sphagnum peat moss. Now the last demonstration, I need a couple of cups, plastic cups, and some water. And I'm going to take just some ordinary tap water here or filtered water. And I'm going to fill one of the cups. And then we're going to take the red transmission fluid. We use this because you can see it a lot easier in the water. And I'm going to put about 5 times the amount of oil in that cup as we put on the pan to demonstrate the Biomatrix. Now again, your clay granules, your clay base, kiloliter base products are not going to float. It's going to go onto the water, and it's going to go right through the oil or fuel and sink to the bottom, carrying a lot of the fuel and oil with it. A true absorbent is going to absorb the oil, but once the sphagnum peat moss has been dried, it actually converts in its natural state from a hydrophilic substance where you use for potting soil and use in your garden, your flower beds, mainly to hold in moisture. But once the peat moss is heat activated, and that heat activation means drying it down to 10% moisture content, it actually goes through a metamorphosis, and it changes from hydrophilic to hydrophobic. And at this point, it'll actually float on water for 72 hours without absorbing any of the water, but yet it'll absorb all the oil. Now I could take this and hold it up And the camera may or may not be able to see on the bottom, there's tiny, literally thousands of tiny little air bubbles on the bottom. But also you can see that there's no transmission fluid on there. It's completely brown. In fact, it's as brown on the bottom as it is on top. Now I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm going to place this paper towel into this other cup, make an indentation, and then I'm going to pour all of the oil, transmission fluid, and biomatrix into this towel. And to show you that our product doesn't leach, I've got a bleach white Bounty paper towel here surrounded with about 1.5 ounces of transmission fluid covered in biomatrix. So what we're going to do here is we're even going to squeeze this, and the only thing that is going to be released is the water itself. No transmission fluid, not even a sheen, not even a color swirl on the surface of the water. All of our transmission fluid has been trapped into the biomatrix. And I'll even turn the towel around so you can see that there's no evidence of transmission fluid. If we had just a drop of the transmission fluid get through, you would easily see it on the towel, as I've just displayed right there. So up to 50 pounds of pressure. So when you have spills in the marine applications or in the water, in a bilge, you can put the peat moss on there and then net it right off within minutes and capture all your fuel and your oil spills. Even if it takes days, you know you got 72 hours before the peat is going to sink. And so that gives you plenty of time to recover the biomatrix in a situation where there's water spilt. Thank you very much. That's all I have on the demonstration today. Thanks.